Welcome to the Gaudium et Spes podcast, where every other week we bring you Catholic teachings and stories of faith from people throughout the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee. Now, here are your hosts, Susanne McNinch and Chez Filippini.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Gaudium et Spes podcast. As always, check out our last episode, which was another teaching series by Bishop Bill. Well, it was kind of a teaching series, but it really was about our new Pope, Pope Leo. And you get a lot of insights from Bishop on, the process, who he talked to before and after, and his thoughts on Pope Leo. And so it's really exciting. So please tune into that episode if you haven't already. As you can see, Chez and I are in the studio, but we've got a very special guest who's just a few states away from us. We've got Jacob Hyman with us. Jacob, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great. Well, Jacob is originally from Florida.
That's right.
And but now he's residing up in Steubenville, Ohio, doing some really exciting things up there. And this is another one of our human interest stories. And so we're excited, Jacob, to have you here with us and to share your story and to learn all about the great things that you're doing up there in Steubenville.
Thank you.
That's right.
Look forward to sharing.
Good.
Jacob, you are on the banks of the Ohio River, and I don't know if it's cloudy or sunny or anything like that, but we always share kind of how our lives are going on this podcast through the first line of Gaudium et Spes, which goes, if you'll bear with me, the joys, the hopes, the griefs, and anxieties of the men of this age, especially those who are poor or in any way afflicted. These are the joys, hopes, griefs, anxieties of the followers of Christ. So, 1,000 miles away, what is up in your world, man?
Yeah. Well, the weather is very nice. I'm grateful to say we are in the 70s. And being by the river, it's always foggy in the morning, but the sun has broken through and it's quite lovely. The joys, the hopes, and the griefs and anxieties of my life, this present moment, it's the same thing for both of them. And that is on, I don't know when this podcast will be coming out, but in 3 or 4 days, on August the 25th, I will be taking my professional engineering licensing exam, which is the big kahuna engineering test for any engineers who are out there know it. So after I get off this podcast, I'll resume studying. But it is joyous, and I am hopeful that I will pass. And it also grief-inducing and anxious, as it's an 8-hour exam. There's 4 hours each section, 80 questions. It's a lot of math, engineering concepts. We'll be doing the civil engineering, environmental and water resources, PE. And so I have been preparing for that for a few months, and it's been like, if I only accomplish at least one thing this year, as I was getting into 2025, it was take and pass my engineering exam. And so that big year goal is coming up in 3 days. And so that is the big thing right now.
Yeah, exciting. So do you get the results instantaneously after you've taken the test, or does it a little bit of a lag time? Or
yeah, you get it. It takes 7 to 10 days for them to get you back a score, and it's one of those pass fail. If you pass, you just pass with just it says pass. If you fail, there is some metrics that you'll get explaining what areas you need to improve on, or that you failed at. So, but it's 7 to 10 days to wait for a single word in my email, basically. So.
Wow. Oof. Talk about stress.
Grief.
I know.
But the things that it would allow me to do, and as I'm sure as we'll get into the podcast, are quite incredible to be able to serve this area and really the whole country in doing good civil engineering work. So
beautiful.
Have you gotten Jacob? I know there's the CPA, the Certified Public Accountant exam. There's the bar. Have you gotten a sense? Is this the hardest of all the public exams? Oh,
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say it's the hardest. Okay. Certainly no. No, it is equivalent. It is the engineer's bar, right?
Okay.
And particularly the one that I am taking, because there's multiple PEs. They do publish the passing results each year, and the environmental and water resources has a pass rate of first time test takers, I think, of 72%. So, and then it has a lower percentage for second time test takers. But you compare that to taking a PE in nuclear engineering or petroleum engineering, and pass rate is like below 50% for first-time test takers. And for nuclear engineering, they even have the stat. It is a 0% pass rate for second-time test takers. So I am not a nuclear engineer, and I wouldn't pass the first time, and like everybody else, I wouldn't pass the second time if I took it as well. So.
Well, Jacob, I think we're really hopeful that you'll pass the first time. So,
thank you.
And we'll be definitely keeping you in our prayers for all of that. So good.
In the interest of letting you get back to your studies, we'll skip us. How you doing? You doing good?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks.
I'm doing good too.
Yeah.
All right. We'll hop right back into it.
I'm so glad you're doing good. That's so good.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Jacob, our listeners out there, and even myself don't know much about you. I've stalked you on the internet a little bit. I know you've done podcasts. I know your photo's been taken many times. You're in local news up there, but let's let our listeners learn a little bit more about you. So, can you tell us where you grew up and what got you to FSU to begin with?
Sure. So I was born in South Florida, West Palm Beach, particularly Jupiter, Florida. I lived off of Indian Trail Road, and I grew up there. And I am a convert, and I was raised actually Jewish, and so grew up going to Temple Bethel down in Jupiter, Florida, and raised in a sort of Reform/conservative Judaism, which was a lot more cultural. We would go to synagogue every week when we were the most observant. We'd go to synagogue every week, light the Shabbos candles at home, but we weren't kosher. Had to have bacon, right? And that was my faith experience growing up. And we ended up moving to North Georgia for my father's work when I began middle school. And it was there in Georgia that my mother and father both had Christian conversions. And more particularly, my father actually was sort of I wouldn't say private, but more so kind of just a more reserved Christian. He had a conversion when he was in the Navy, even he himself being raised Jewish. And my mother was raised Jewish. And when they married, they mutually agreed, per my mother insisting that we're going to raise the family Jewish. Well, by the time we moved up to Georgia, we had kind of gotten a bit lax in our Jewish faith, and we weren't going to drive about an hour away to get to the nearest synagogue, whereas in South Florida, it was 15, 20 minutes away. There was a Messianic synagogue, which was quite close to us, and my father proposed it as sort of a middle ground. And it was there that we would go for our weekly worship. And it was in that context that my mother had a Christian conversion, baptized in a river in Georgia with the Trinitarian baptism in Hebrew. It was pretty neat.
Wow.
Wow.
All the while, though, let it be known, I was quite confused by everything that was going on, because immediately after my mother's conversion, we would go to the Messianic synagogue maybe once a month, but we started attending a Methodist church that was quite close to us. And that was a very kind of non-denominational in like worship feel, very expressive praise and worship, compared to the much more liturgical, even in the Messianic synagogue, liturgical practice of the Sunday morning. And I am quite an inquisitive person. I wasn't reading philosophy or theology at that time, but I was confused by all this Sunday morning location changing. And I kind of made a mental decision to not really worry about it. I had my own teenage enjoyments of video games and Minecraft and whatnot. And my parents would drag me to church every Sunday morning, but I kind of clocked out. And I would call myself an apatheist at that time. Not agnostic or atheistic, but I don't care if God does or doesn't exist. Apathetic towards God. And this is how I went about going into my senior year of high school. And I didn't really have much of a life plan up to that point. I was doing junior ROTC, so maybe I'd go into college and do ROTC there. But my mother encouraged me to go on a mission trip my senior year of going into my senior year of high school. And I said I'd do it because I wanted a gold seal on my high school diploma, which said I did, the principal seal for doing 60 whatever hours of community service. And I could get like a whole third of that, if not more, by going on a mission trip. And so I did. We went to Raleigh, North Carolina, doing kind of inner city ministry work it was a youth works trip. I initially wanted nothing to do with anybody there, but I found myself there for a whole week. So I thought, well, I might as well try to talk to these people because I don't have anything else I could do. And I did sincerely enjoy the service that we were doing, even though for me it was maybe more of a humanistic, personal service than it was incarnating the gospel. But through opening up to some of my fellow youth on that trip and other people who were leading that mission trip, the night before the last day, we were encouraged to take time for personal prayer. And it was perhaps the first time that I had ever really personally prayed before. And in that, I had a profound experience of God and of faith on a Thursday night in July in 2013. And I knew, I think I'm a Christian now. Like I can't refute what I just experienced. And so I was the best I ever did academically my senior year. I was super involved with my church, and it was coming time for college applications. And with I had a great GPA and involvements to show for my senior year, but I was a fine student. I was like a low B student, except for the maths, in which I was an A. But I applied to a number of Georgia schools, and I didn't get in. I applied to Florida State per my father's recommendation. They had ROTC, they had an engineering program, and they just won the national championships that year the year before in 2013. Yeah. And I did it on a whim. I'll be serious. I really did it on a whim. I had not heard of Florida State before. And I applied, and I only got into two schools, Valdosta State, which is a fine school, but it didn't have an engineering program, and Florida State. So, okay, I'm going to go to Florida State. And so with and I guess kind of queuing up kind of my mentality going into Florida State, it was the summer going into college that I had my first real understandings of the divisions and differences in Christianity. Being raised Jewish, I was very sheltered from Christianity. And I sincerely could not have told you if the Pope was Catholic, because I didn't know who the Pope was, and I did not know what Catholicism was. And it was through trying to read my Bible, and especially Genesis, and being like, is this literal? Is this figurative? And Googling these things, and then going down Wikipedia rabbit holes and being like, what's a fundamentalist? Like, I guess I'm a Methodist, but I've always thought I'm non-denominational. And I realized these differences are not just personality preferences, but are, matters of truth. And I had this sense about me, they can't all be right. One of them has to be right, a Christian denomination. And I'm going to be going to college. I'm going to be going to Florida State. I'm going to be able to meet all these different Christians and all the campus ministries. And so getting ready for college, I had this goal of going to Florida State, getting an engineering degree, doing ROTC, and figuring out which Christian denomination was true. So that brings us to August of 2014.
Wow. So did you, fascinating. I mean, I've heard that within the Jewish faith that the mother is the one that really is the dominant force in whether the children are raised that same way and things like that. Is that true?
Yeah. This I say now I'm more Jewish now than I'm Catholic, but I still need to read up on these things. It's my understanding there is a teaching, and I don't know at what point in Judaism it developed, but that the Jewishness, so to say, passes through. Yeah, it's a matrilineal lineage. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So
yeah. Exciting. Yes. Okay. So you go to Florida State. Now, are you on an ROTC scholarship or just joining the program, or tell us a little bit more about that?
I was initially just joining the program. But I was able to qualify my second semester for an ROTC scholarship. So except for my freshman year, I was on scholarship for the whole thing. Yes.
Okay. Fantastic.
By the way, you are absolutely, Susanne is about to go into full-blown Navy recruiter mode.
Yes.
It's okay. My father was Navy. So
yes,
and
he mentioned that already. So.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Okay. There we go.
Yeah. So
terrific. Okay. So you're in ROTC at FSU, and you're exploring all the different campus ministries, so tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. And I mentioned in the write-up that should be coming out in the Diocesan magazine, but I approach, I want to be exposed to as much Christianity as I can be. And, serendipitously, it was the Catholics were the first kind of campus ministry that I met through. The first day I was at Florida State going to one of the orientation week events, a speed friending event at one of the meal halls, and made some few friends, and we're like, what are we going to do? Because it was like only 6 or 7 p.m. And one of them said, there's a slip and slide happening. Great. Let's go to the slip and slide. And so we walk over to the slip and slide, and lo and behold, it's on the lawn of the Co-Cathedral St. Thomas More. It was a CSU event, and it was I think one of the first events, Wednesday of orientation week, they were doing, and it was a water slide movie night. And when we got onto the Co-Cathedral's land, they all went for the water slide, and I went for the informational booth to be like, oh, cool. My Czech Catholics. Let's see what they're about. And I the very first person I talked to was Jose Lim, who was a campus missionary at the time, who's now a priest. So I think I picked a pretty good first person to talk to, but I must have been like a campus missionary's dream prospect of someone really on fire for their faith, but who's eager to learn particularly about your expression of it, your denomination. And so the Catholics were the first people I met. And from there, I made friends who invited me to, the Wednesday spirit nights and the student masses, and that was the first time I'd ever gone to a mass before. But I also exposed myself to the Wesleyan campus ministry and the non-denominational and the Southern Baptist ministry, and it was great. And what I say though is I would go to these different ministry events, but it was on Sundays, and always Sundays, for my Sunday obligation. I would find myself be going to mass for most of the most Sundays within my freshman year. I was a combination of just some of the incredible people that are part of the Catholic Student Union, but also just the mystery of the liturgy. And it was also new to me, but also the familiarity of being raised Jewish and the liturgical expression of the faith. As I continued to attend Catholic things, I went on the fall retreat, the CSU fall retreat in 2014, and literally being exposed to Eucharistic adoration for the first time, being exposed to, I have this great memory of everyone's doing their big Saturday night confession on retreat, right? And some of the people are telling me, well, you're not Catholic, but you could I think I might have even gone in and said, I'm not Catholic. I'm just interested in what this is. But I do have a memory of people who are making their examination of consciences. And I'm just standing next to them in line asking, what are you doing exactly? So you're going to go in there and confess your sins to a priest and get them forgiven? And they're I'd be like, hey man, yeah, we'll talk about this later. But right now I'm trying to confess my sins. But some of them were explaining the theology of confession to me while they're in line for confession. I just was incredibly privileged to be exposed to these new things and then have people be able to explain them close to or on the spot of when they were happening. And Catholicism, more than any other Christian expression that I experienced, gave me the most things that I actually had to have an answer about. The sacraments, the saints, sanctity, questions of grace. These were all things that I realized I couldn't just be like, well, that's just the Catholic thing. It's like there's much more to grapple with. And that was, for my disposition and personality, attractive to be like, I need to understand these things. And there was more to understand, versus a non-denominational expression where it really is just the scriptures. And there isn't much more. Your mileage may vary based on, where you go for non-denomination. But by the end of my freshman year, I had found myself mostly going to Catholic things and realized I am not completely sold on this, but I believe, I want to believe, and I want to get more of these questions answered and understand if the church is true. And so going into the beginning of my sophomore year in 2016, I begin RCIA, now OCIA, at the Co-Cathedral of St. Thomas More.
Wow. I'm always in awe of individuals like yourself who make the conversion, because your curiosity, your questions, your excitement about all of the things that are Catholic, I think as a cradle to grave Catholic, I take some of those things for granted, I guess. Yeah. I don't really explore other religions, and I don't... But hearing stories from you makes me just appreciate my Catholicism even more. So thank you for sharing your story on that. And I think it's just a beautiful conversion. I'm excited for you. So you finish your studies at Florida State, graduate, and then you join the Air Force, correct?
That's
Get
correct.
Commissioned? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get commissioned. Yeah, I enter the church Easter of 2016, and do my studies. I did the 5-year engineering track. And so I graduate on one day, and then, I graduate in the morning and I commission in the evening of the same day, May 4th of 2019. And so I end up going to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. I had a unique assignment. I was picked up to do a kind of research and development master's degree at the Air Force Institute of Technology in Dayton. And that was my interesting, my first 2 years of Air Force, but actually my only 2 years. I had an early medical discharge. And sort of in that time, the 2019 to 2021, I had a number of kind of key relationships and critical support fall through in various ways. And that whole Air Force time was almost a preparing for how I've reflected on it now, specifically with what those 5 years of college, kind of that trajectory that it seemed like I was going. That 2 years then of military service and the premature discharge sort of landed me at a bit of a soft life reboot. And it was in the context of those 2 years. I mean, I only had become Catholic in 2016, and so continued to learn new things. And I'd say 2019 and 2020 was the time that I started to sink my teeth into the Church's social teaching. That was like the definitive new thing I learned in 2019, 2020. And in that time, I started reading papal social encyclicals. And then I started reading more popular paperback and was it felt like this great goldmine of things. And we were in a very contentious election year in 2020. So being like, there's this thing, this Catholic social teaching, which actually incarnates the gospel in political life, that was giving me more meat on the bone of what it meant to be a Catholic when 2020, everyone's like, well, what are you doing, man? What are you doing with this election? And I wanted to give a thorough answer. And so that led me to meeting a number of great people and making a number of great connections. And ultimately to the studio that I'm recording this in is the political think tank of political theology / apostolate called New Polity, which is based here in Steubenville, Ohio. And it's been operating since 2019 and really got going in late 2020, early 21, around the time that I was discovering it for the first time. And I was very convicted on not just the thought that was being put out, but what I started to see was a life that was being developed here in Steubenville. You have the Franciscan University within Steubenville that, has become a nationally recognized institution since the 1970s. But there's this new moment within Steubenville Catholic history, if you would, of people moving here not just for the university, but for the community and the town itself, of which I was seeing was heavily and is heavily influenced by the thought of Catholic social teaching, and especially its understanding through New Polity. And I got the formal notice of medical discharge in March of 2021, and that it'd be coming in 2 months. And so I realized this is happening, and I have an opportunity here with kind of those college life plans ending. I had no reason to be anywhere in particular, and I deeply desired to live out my faith in community, and was finding out all the different ways you could do that at that time, and visited Steubenville a few times, because thankfully the leave radius at Wright-Patterson was 4 hours, and Steubenville is 3.5 hours from Dayton, Ohio. So I could come here on weekends and visit without taking leave. It was beautiful. And I was doing the out processing I was doing my out processing at the time when it was Easter of 21, and it was COVID. So all of it was like PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint via Zoom. And so I was able to post up shop in Leonardo's, the coffee shop here, for like almost all of the Easter octave in 21, and meet the people who call this place home, and who are the movers and shakers of trying to fix up old buildings and serve the poor and raising families here. And it was all just incredibly attractive, and kind of putting meat on the bones of the things that I was reading the past year. And so I made this internal decision, and I wanted it to move to Steubenville, and I made it a prayer. Lord, can you help me find work and housing? Because that is some of the challenges here of not enough work and not enough move-in ready housing at the moment. But within 2 weeks, I found work and housing. Through the connections that I was able to make in just visiting, for Easter and one time before that. And so on March 6th of 2016, March 6th of 2021, I was discharged from the Air Force. May 6th of 21, I was discharged from the Air Force. And May 16th of 21, I moved to Steubenville. And I've been here more or less ever since.
Wow.
Okay.
Jacob, so, I think in many Catholics' minds, when we think of like, oh, there's plenty of Catholic towns, you think of South Boston, or mostly in the Northeast, like Providence, Rhode Island. Is that right? Would that be maybe, or something like that? Or maybe like there's a movement in some circles of Catholicism, the Benedict option, where families maybe leave the local community to join more fervently in kind of intentional Christian community. Could you talk about how Steubenville's a little different than both of those? Like, what is this reality of community and revitalization, all these kinds of things?
Man, we'll have another podcast about this, because I can go on this forever. I think kind of the key points is that Steubenville is economically depressed, and Steubenville has history that is apart from the Catholics. On the economically depressed piece, we're in the Ohio Valley here. In the 1940s, Steubenville's peak population was 40,000, and this was a workshop of the world, predominantly steel, but we produced glass, pottery, a lot of other kind of pre-World War II industries. And following the war, the number of that industry started to dry up, and in the 80s it just started a nosedive, and finally the mills formally closed. The mills, and it was already pretty much dead, but the mill closed in 2006 in Steubenville. Our population now is 18,000, so we went from 38,000 to 18,000, and I think that makes us different from different from some of these communities, because it is a lot harder to do things here. There's the loss of the economy, or of these industries, these huge industries that made up the economy, has made the cost of living incredibly affordable. And so that is a plus, that you can find work here if you're able to be a bit scrappy, and you'll find that that work is commensurate to the cost of living here in a number of situations. So I think there is a greater there's a greater push for people to be able to move here due to just how affordable it is, and even it's increased since COVID, because remote work has brought in a new wave of people. But even then, with kind of the increases we've seen in the past 5 years, it is still much more affordable than a lot of places. But also to the point of history, Steubenville, like the Franciscan University of Steubenville began as the College of Steubenville back in 1945, or sometime around then. And it was really under Father Michael Scanlon in the 1970s that brought it into its kind of the changes that he made and the culture that he instituted is what's made it this, this dominant symbol of and place of dynamic Catholicism, to the point of where, when I would be at Florida State in 2014 and 15, people would say, yeah, I grew up going to a Steubenville conference, and I had no idea what that was, and I would read Scott Hahn as part of my conversion. And so I knew, okay, he lives in Steubenville, he teaches at this Franciscan place. So Steubenville existed in this like imaginary sense in my mind, but I didn't know this place outside of it. But what is so unique is that this place has such deep history, that it was founded as a surveying outpost in the late 1700s as part of the westward expansion of the United States, and that we have a bunch of kind of historic Catholic infrastructure of old churches from the various European immigrants that call this place home. I go to St. Peter's Church, and that was the Irish parish, right? What I find interesting, though, is it allows us in a certain way, and I'll personally, I'd say in ways more than other places, which perhaps have kind of more a glitzy economy or don't have as much deep history. It allows us, because we have no other choice, if we actually want to live here, to be in the world. You really have to grapple with this place. And I think in that way, actually incarnate the gospel. And I think a temptation, and I can fall into it, and I have fallen into it, is just treat a place like Steubenville like a Catholic sandbox, where everything's cheap. You can just pick up and move here, and there's great dynamic parishes, and there's so many needs that you can just be like, I'm going to move here and fill a need. But it kind of a saying that has come to me, if you treat this place like a sandbox, you're going to be building on sand. And that fundamentally there needs to be an engagement with the people and the place of encountering the people who call this place home, if you actually want to raise a family here, incarnate the gospel here, serve the poor. Because they're not just the poor, they're the poor of Steubenville, who have had Franciscan University in their backyard for decades. And so the discussions we need to be having are not only just like a charismatic preaching, but a deep understanding of the personal experiences of living in this place, and often because you didn't have a choice to leave. Whereas the Catholics who are coming here are coming here voluntarily because of the good that they see here. And so I think compared to a place which has always been doing well and has always had a bit of a nice time, there really is a condescension that the Catholics, not exclusively, because if you're rich in Steubenville, you're poor in the rest of the world, right? So in terms of just cost of living wise, but there still is from the relatively rich to the relatively poor, there still is a condescension that has to happen. And I think Steubenville, better than a lot of places, requires you to do that if you actually want to live here and start a business here, engage with the city government here, and call this place home. And I like that you got to deal with reality a bit more here, because it's not as pretty, but it's that's part of the thing that I love about this place.
Jacob, going back to this encounter with Catholic social teaching. It's incarnating of the gospel. Most people, when they encounter Catholic social teaching, a lot of them go towards maybe, okay, the political life is what I'm called to instantiate this aspect of Catholic social teaching, or like really just kind of hands-on service to the poor, the least among us, in the most direct way. But you found this reality that has draws from your civil engineering background and this movement called the New Urbanism. And so tell us about how this aspect of Catholic social teaching aligns with maybe some revitalization movements throughout the country.
Yeah. I found it funny as I was starting to learn about the New Urbanism or about strong towns and Catholic social teaching, a bunch of buzzwords I'll talk about all throughout this. When I first started encountering Catholic social teaching, I think this is a great impulse from just about everybody, and it always happens. You start reading this stuff, and it's like, oh my gosh, I need to buy 10 acres and farm. That's what I have to do if I want to be living out Catholic social teaching. And that was me. My first job in Steubenville was working with Sean and Beth Doherty, some incredibly renowned Catholic farmers, subsistence farmers who do the homesteading circuit. And I was standing up an urban garden underneath their guidance and was personally discerning whether or not, I was gonna hang up my engineering degrees and go back to the land and farm and such. And in part, that's difficult. You can't make for great numbers of reasons. It's incredibly difficult. But I also started to encounter this place deeply, like that. Oh, Steubenville exists. Like I might want to go and farm, but who's going to take care of this town that's already here? And I saw that I had the skills through my engineering studies to potentially help with that. And what I always loved was when I would engage with the kind of agrarian type, of which I was one, Catholic social teaching people. I always was slightly contrarian because of my engineering background. And when I was at Florida State, I almost completed an urban planning minor, as I had already taken half of the electives that required it. And I didn't end up completing it, but it was enough to get me thinking about strong towns, about new urbanism. And so I loved to be the person which was like, well, I think the city is actually really important and good too. And we need to figure out how. And so I always had that in my mind. But I started to see, if we say that Catholic social teaching is this like incarnation of the gospel, that means like we're actually building things and places. And I started to kind of from my engineering, or more particularly in my urban planning studies, I really did start to see how we build our communities affect our lives in them, in terms of how frequently we see our friends, how easily we can access our parish or our schools or work, how frequently we encounter the poor, is all based on what kind of environment do we live in. And the popes don't talk a whole heck of a lot about the city within the kind of encyclical tradition, but there is enough there synthesizing throughout the various encyclicals of the fact that so many people live in cities now, and that is where you encounter people. And so if you actually want to preach the gospel, it's going to be in a city, likely more than anywhere else. And even that's the history of our faith, of preaching in Rome and such. And so, well, if the city is where we're going to meet the people, then what is that city doing to the people? And where are they at in their lives with respect to the place that they live, and how ready would they be able to receive the gospel? Or what kind of friendships do they have based on the place that they live, and how easy it is or isn't to meet those people? And I found that whole, I was convicted of these things reading Catholic social teaching, but then I approached the more, I wouldn't even say popular, because it's still very, very niche, but it is the new urbanism thought and the strong towns thought. I'd say strong towns is actually incredibly more popular than it was even just a few years ago, but the new urbanism is a bit more niche still, of architects and engineers who, coming from various schools of thought and philosophies, kind of coming to these understandings of like, we should be making cities that allow us to be more human. And I was like, I agree. And I'm able to agree coming through Catholic social teaching. And my agreement is like, whoa, wait, you're here too. There's Catholics here too. And be able to talk with other people that I'd never encounter otherwise, but who see the same problems that I do as a Catholic in terms of our communities and our cities. And we're able to find a meeting place. And I can talk more about new urbanism and strong towns, but these things that have become such a personal influence in my life and how I do my own work in this place of Steubenville, of trying to sanctify it, have a lot of implicit Catholicity in them. That's sort of funny to turn around on people when there's the new urbanists love using the phrase subsidiarity all the time. They love it, and they don't know, or not all of them, but maybe some of the newer ones, they don't know it's Catholic, and that it's we need some royalties anytime you say that word, subsidiarity, right? So, yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. Hey, Jacob, can you share with us a project or an initiative, something tangible that you're working on that kind of takes what you've just been talking about in concept and is sort of a reality for us, so that I can kind of picture some of the things that you're actually doing?
Yeah. The thing that comes most to mind at this present moment is, I think part of what it means to be a Catholic, to engage with, or if you're going to live in a city, which all of us do, most of us do, even if that city is pretty spread out. I believe that, and this is in the tradition, that as a Catholic, you need to be an engaged citizen in the place that you live. Even if it's not perfect, you can't just benefit from the goods of the place that you live without being a citizen in it. And I think that means I think that means more than just voting, but actually understanding the needs of your neighbor, and who are the people in power, who are the ones who are supposed to be meeting the needs of your neighbor. And so in Steubenville, I started a local chapter of the Strong Towns National Nonprofit over 2 years ago. We've done a variety of things, but a sort of a government transparency piece has been really important to us. And we, for the past few months now, have been going to, Steubenville has city council meetings every week, Tuesday nights. And so we go, and we one of us, we rotate, we actually take notes, because Steubenville is a bit more low tech. We don't live stream our city council meetings. It takes a whole week for meeting minutes to get out. And so and not everybody can commit to weekly meetings, and they're boring. And so we, we send somebody in to take meeting minutes, and we utilize the Substack platform. We put those minutes out, and not only verbatim what is said, but also with commentary of understanding some of the context, but also what is this the type of town that we want to build, and that gets circulated through Facebook and email chains, and we get, in a tiny town of Steubenville now, typically 400 to 500 people each week reading this. And they've started to come to city council now, and it happened organically to the point that after every city council, we now walk across the street to the coffee shop, and we go and get ice cream together to talk about what we just listened to, and how do we make our town better if we see the needs of our neighbors, and we see the people who are in the positions of power to try to meet the needs of our neighbors, and we're seeing a disconnect. Well, then how can we talk more? And I found in a non-confrontational setting, the ice cream really brings out the best in people. And we've been able to have incredible conversations with people. We had 9 people in our small town come to city council, or come to ice cream after city council this past week. And with how small this town is, leaders come as well. We had a county commissioner come last week, the city manager come 2 weeks ago. And so, being an active citizen, it made sense in this way, through reporting on city council meetings. And it's been a huge resource for the citizens within Steubenville to understand, how do we actually improve some of the things that we see is affecting our community.
Two phrases come to mind, like political slogans that have dominated in recent decades. It's the economy stupid is one, but then more than anything, all politics is local. And I've always found that to be like, what? No, it's not. It's not local. And your point, Jacob, is kind of like, no. Like the way that our lives are being shaped, literally like our lives. And you mentioned all these things. How far do I travel to go to my school and my grocery store and my parish? Do I encounter poor people? Can I walk anywhere? Is my job at all related to the people that I live with and around? That's kind of still in a lot of ways, maybe not predominantly, but at least partially a local reality, zoning laws and conversations with people who invite. Talk more about how maybe without having that intentionality at the local level, you might miss how much your life is being shaped at the local level.
Yeah. I think that and I think I was always told this was like an American problem, that we can't imagine how other people live. And maybe that's true, but I think it was certainly true for me growing up. I grew up in what we call the suburbs, right? In both Florida and Georgia. And I think the simplest way, or kind of a catch-all term in a way for the suburbs, is if you wanted to get anywhere, you had to get driven there, often, by a private automobile. And growing up, I don't think I realized how much that how much that affected my life. And more importantly, how easy it was for me to meet people or see people. And this is a particular critique within the New Urbanist and the Strong Towns movement of the necessary reliance in our communities on a private automobile. Of could we go about our lives in another way? And putting my engineering goggles on, I've seen how, like, to the point of in our codes and in the way that we even teach, how we really can't imagine a different type of world. And it's always this eye opener when we go vacation in Europe in some of these historic cities, and we're just like, whoa, I can walk everywhere. I can walk everywhere. I see all these different age groups as well. It's not just like, well, the young people are always the ones that are out. I see all these different age groups and all these different classes of people. I think that's kind of a common experience for those who can make a vacation out to Europe. They sort of see this, like, they think that is European. Well, the Europeans live like that, and we're going to live like this in these in the suburban environments. But something I've learned in doing the research is that is in America, like we had that in America at a point of being able to live in kind of more people living in more just more human-centered, walkable environments. But with how long we've been building different suburban environments, it's hard to think about something different and really imagine it and conceptualize it. So I think just that I think everything that we take for granted, everything that we take for granted within a lot of our communities, in the way that we get around, get groceries, or it wasn't until I started practicing engineering that I realized how much goes into, restriping a street. I think we look at a lot of different things that we always think that the streets will be striped and the stoplights will be working in our communities. We don't realize how much work goes into this to be able to afford this way of life. And so I think if we stop and consider the different things that we take for granted within sort of the American suburban way of life, we're going to start to see how intentional that has been built up, but then also question in what ways is this more or isn't more human in our own personal lives. Sorry, that felt a bit like a ramble. I apologize.
No. I mean, Susanne, as we look at our windows here on Garden Street next to our pastoral center. The street is literally being torn up, and you're getting to see underneath what all goes into making sure that our streets don't flood. And just the amount of labor and work and engineering precision, expertise, machinery to maintain. And as soon as you get down from 2 lanes to 1 lane, everyone's like, what the heck is going on? We're dying. But yeah. Well, Jacob, maybe we can close on this. In the article that you mentioned in the September-October edition of the Catholic Compass, you mentioned a little bit about an inspiration from a Catholic Blessed Marvelli, I believe, who just kind of it made this, as Susanne mentioned, concrete. And what did he do? And how is this kind of an inspiration for your vocation?
Yeah. The person you're talking about is Blessed Alberto Marvelli, who has become a patron of mine through my practice of being a civil engineer as a Catholic. And I just stumbled upon him through one day just Googling, patron saints of engineers, right? And he popped up. I'm like, who's this guy? Alberto was a Italian youth who was a very athletic, smart guy. He went to school for engineering, worked at a time for Fiat. And he lived in the town of Rimini. So he's around the same time, or perhaps a little later, as someone like Pier Giorgio Frassati. But he, in his town of Rimini, it was quite massively bombed out during the Second World War. And even before that, he was an active part within his community, but especially following the bombings, he and his leadership and his talent was looked at to be kind of a town administrator to help reallocate or rebuild the housing that was lost. He biked around everywhere. There's old photos of him in his bike, and that's how he would often get to and fro places in Rimini. He was known to give away his bike to those in need. And he proved to be a very capable administrator and civil engineer. And he ended up going on to do politics within the region of Italy that Rimini was in, but his life was unfortunately cut short as he was biking to a kind of campaign meeting for, I forget the election he was running for, but he was hit by a military truck while biking and died at the age of 27 or 28. And he in that campaign that he was running for, his mother ended up taking his place, and she won the election. Just of how deep the spirit of this of the care that he brought and of the person that he was. And there's not a lot written on him, and of what little he wrote is mostly contained to a diary, which is quite short. And it's poorly translated into English, but I do have a copy of it. And one of the things that has struck with me, and the most profound thing in my life that he said, is this quote: "If we want to teach the poor how to save their souls, we must firstly enable them to live in such a way that they might be aware of having one." And I've loved that quote since I found it. And I don't know that he wrote this like explicitly as speaking to engineers. I doubt that. But in identifying with a fellow engineer, it's made sense to me in thinking about how much asking the question, does the built environment I interact with on a daily basis remind me that I have a soul, fundamentally? And I think there is a lot of inhuman design and ways in which we get about our daily lives with kind of the typical American experience. And I realized as an engineer, the sort of invisible part that I play in that work of actually creating the places that people spend most of their lives in. And so my sort of self-question when I do my work is, am I helping to create a place that reminds people that they have a soul? It's not even am I preaching Christ to them. Like, if I can't preach Christ to them if they don't know that they have a soul and that that's something that they're connected to, I think creating an environment where sort of that longing of our heart comes alive when we're able to be in a neighborhood or that is just beautiful and is taken care of, and we think somebody thought this through, or maybe it was thought through over centuries of many different hands coming together and building it. We see like people cared about this place, and as an engineer, I in a very significant way help to actually literally build that, but do the designs that build that place. And so I want to be building things that remind people that they have a soul. And I think Christ can better be preached in that way if people can spend most of their times in a place that reminds them of that.
Wow.
100%.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, yeah. The deep incarnational sense of Catholicism, our souls, our bodies, our environment, our spiritual destiny are just so closely intertwined. And it requires real intentionality and love from people like yourselves who love their neighbor to actually go forward and put something together for generations. So, Jacob, thank you. Thank you for your service in all the ways.
Exactly. Thank you so much. I mean, you're so inspiring, and I hope those who are listening today maybe think about their own community in a different way, and how can they be a better citizen too.
That's right. Yeah. We do want to plug, guys. We don't often do this, but there is an opportunity. If you saw me sneaking and looking at my phone, I can't say anything for Tallahassee, our beloved Tallahassee. By the way, thinking about future generations, thank you to the person who purchased St. Thomas More to be on the hill overlooking the university, so we could have a slip and slide that would attract Jacob and his friends.
Me Catholic. Yeah.
It's all about urban planning, people. Obviously, Tallahassee has a vibrant civic community and a bunch of people who are just by nature oriented towards political life. Over here in Pensacola, though, we do have an opportunity September 23rd through 25th. There's going to be a Civic Leader Summit that is in partnership with Strong Towns. You can go to civicleadersummit.com. There'll be some local Catholic personalities and speakers who will be there talking about these very things. So if you're just like, whoa, never heard of any of this before, we're going to have a front row seat to this whole thing and how it applies to local communities.
You know what's funny about that?
25th. Yes.
That
no.
It's the 23rd to the 25th. You said.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just confirmed this literally like an hour before we began this. Chuck Marone, who will be one of the speakers at this at the conference, he is a Catholic. He's the founder of Strong Towns, and he frequently tours around giving talks about Strong Towns principles. And he's going to be in Akron on the 18th, Akron, Ohio. And we finally made it work with all of their scheduling that he is going to be coming to Steubenville on the evening of the 18th and the morning of the 19th of September. So funnily enough, he will be in Steubenville, Ohio, right before he is going to be with you guys in Pensacola.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
And super sneak preview, Chuck Marone will actually be on Dr. Tom Neal's podcast. That one will already have come out by the time this, it'll come out afterwards. So we're getting all the cross-pollination, guys. It's a significant moment. So yeah, plenty of good ideas. But Jacob, again, thank you so much. This has been an amazing, eye-opening experience and another testament to the ministry of our college campuses in our diocese and how it can just transform amazing people already into disciples and ambassadors for Christ. So thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you all.
All right. Guys, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. We're continuing the Catholic social teaching theme here. It is going to be we're finally getting to Rerum Novarum with Dr. Luke Arredondo in our Catholic social teaching series. So we'll see you back here then.
Thank you for tuning in today to the Gaudium et Spes podcast. If you would like to know more about our podcast, please visit our website, gaudiumετspes.net, or go to ptdiocese.org and click the button that says podcast. If you listen to the audio version from an app such as Apple Podcast, Spotify, or iHeartRadio, be sure to rate, review, and comment. If you watched us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe or leave us a comment there as well. Thank you for joining us.